County Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Before we get started here, anybody that wants to talk on a specific item or in public comment, we ask that you fill out a appearance slip. Boom. All right, number two, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Ron Buckholz.
Here.
Mark Helwig.
Here.
Jeff Haney.
Here.
Marshall Savitsky.
Here.
John Sorowski. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, certification of compliance with the open meeting law. Madam Clerk.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
All right, thank you. Number 5, meeting agenda has been presented and we're going to move on with it. And number 6, public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes or less, directed to the committee as a whole. The committee cannot respond to your comments. And like I said, everybody fill out a sheet. So, all right, first one up is Linda Zilmer.
Good morning, Linda Zilmer, resident of the Village of Birchwood, Edgewater property owner. And in Edgewater, we are also served by the Birchwood Four Corners Emergency Services District. And the Village of Birchwood Police Department. I have a couple of questions that I hope when the committee hears from GenCom this morning that they will cover. You will ask questions regarding to helping explain, because I'm sure other people will want to listen in on the recording of this, explain the difference between portable and mobile. And is that an either or is there an option for both in looking at what the county's options are? Explain when you talk acronyms like WISCOM and GenCom, please give an explanation of what those are and within what communication system the county operates. Explain the impact on our local fire and ambulance providers. You know, we have in-town fire departments like Hayward and Winter, but we also have the BFC ESD that serves Edgewater and the village police that serve Edgewater, as well as then also the impact on any changes Sawyer County makes in a new system with how that will be compatible with neighboring counties. And I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time reading that. I think also, will this also change anything with communications for our highway departments? So right now, I'm not sure whether emergency services are separate from highway or if they're, if they also share systems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else out there want to speak in public comment? Lynn, do you have anybody online? Okay, thank you. All right, number 7, consider approval of minutes from the previous meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the 5/2/24 public safety meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Helwig. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Sorowski. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Number 8, Circuit Court. Judge Isham, you're up.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Did I do that wrong? No, you're up. You're right. I thought I jumped ahead here.
There's
Sorry.
an A above, but there's nothing on it. At least that's what it looks like to me. Well, the only couple of updates that I have are that we did have our first meeting since me joining for the Court Security and Facilities Committee. We did that last month, May something. And we'll have another meeting in August because they need to be quarterly meetings. The meetings are related to court security, security in the entire building, and use of the facilities that we have. I will send an email out when we have that next meeting locked down so that everybody who needs to attend that can. And then otherwise, we have recovery court still going on. It's going really, really well. We have 6 participants now, and we have a list of probably about 6 more that are in phases towards being able to join the recovery court. There's a couple of different phases. There's, first of all, they have to accept the agreement to enter the recovery court. There's a contract and everything, and then there's a sentencing. They also have to do some assessments. Once all of that's completed, then they can join in to recovery court. I don't know at what point we're gonna have to move to sort of like a wait list. I don't know at what point that's gonna happen, but I think that point will eventually happen considering the list is already as long as it is. But it's going really well. We're having really productive meetings, and I have a lot of optimism for how that's gonna impact our community.
Good.
Otherwise, I don't really think I have any other updates. No.
Okay, anybody have any questions for the judge? Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, number 9. Clerk of Courts, Marge?
The only update is June 14th is the last day for Miss Emily, one of our criminal clerks. We did some interviews yesterday. We had a couple of positive applicants, and our offering will know more next month as far as where we're at with that, with replacing Emily. Other than that, do you have any questions on my report? That's all I have.
No, does the committee have any questions for Mark? All right, thanks, Marge, appreciate it. All right, number 10, Sheriff's Department report, Communication Center Emergency Management report.
Morning, and thank you. For the Communications Center, we have 2 employees currently going through training, one in the final stages and the other one entered in the second phase. There'll be another one starting in the middle part of June. There's another grant coming out for the 3rd part of the Next Gen 911 grant, as well as a cybersecurity grant and a GIS grant. We're still working with AT&T and installing equipment, and it is obvious that summertime is upon us in Sawyer County as the call volume increased in the last month, 875 calls above this time last year. The last 2.5 weeks of May were very busy for Sawyer County. So, as far as emergency management, still working with townships and villages and their EOPs and ways to improve them. Held a Skywarn spotter training class that was held at the courthouse on May 22nd. There was about 12 attendees that attended that from the area, and we'll still be hosting our emergency planning course in October.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
What's PSAP?
The public safety answering point is the dispatch center.
Never heard of it.
Anyone else got any questions? All right, thank you. Okay, number B, patrol report, Lieutenant Rapinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see from our patrol report, our numbers went up, and a lot of that is due to the implementation of traffic grants right now and increased traffic contacts. So there isn't a crime wave occurring right now in Sawyer County. It's just our officers are out there doing more traffic contacts and handling those calls for service in addition to that. Our numbers continue to mirror what we have for last year, or the last 3 months rather, 718 in March and 659. So it was quite an increase in May of 24 and an increase over what it was last year of 852. For May, our Sawyer County deputies in this period have issued 35 traffic citations, 26 written warnings, and 70 non-traffic citations. And that is attributed to the closing out of the truancy contacts for the truancy deputy. So that attributes to why that's such a large number as the school year ended. Community maps, there have been 21 total crashes, 5 with personal injuries, and no additional fatalities in our county, bringing our yearly total to 121 crashes, 18 personal injury, and 1 fatality. As you probably have seen on Facebook and elsewhere, our recreational deputy Craig Depew, with over 20 years of service, has tendered his retirement. He began his service as a jailer in 2003, part-time and full-time in 2004, and from there he was promoted to the patrol division and worked in the remainder of his career. While in patrol, he was a field training officer, a SWAT team member, and recreational deputy. We wish him continued success and congratulate his achievements as a law enforcement officer and, of course, an outstanding member of our community. We are currently in the process of filling the subsequent vacancies that have occurred. We did appoint a new recreational deputy, Nate Fry, who will begin his short training with Deputy Darren Jensen. He'll be taking over those duties when he returns to duty next week. And then the lateral shift movements, we'll have a vacancy then after all the shift selection is done. And we do have a few applicants out there right now.
Okay,
That
good.
concludes my report.
Great. Anybody have any questions for the lieutenant? All right, thank you. All right, number C, jail report, Lieutenant.
Thank you. The May 24 jail report shows numbers continuing on the decline. We are at 52.75 for an average daily population. Average probation incarceration was at 9.5. Pre-sentence incarceration was at 32. Average sentence incarceration was at 11.25. The day that this report was ran, we did not have anybody on electronic monitoring. That has since changed. I believe there's 3 now. We still have 1 working Huber. The day that this report was generated, our population was at 50. Our current inmate unemployment rate is 76%.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Lieutenant Woolard? All right, thank you for your report. All right, number D, communication specialist report, public safety radio systems upgrade and discussion and possible action item. Andy, you want to talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll just do an introduction and then we have
Okay.
Gary and Aaron here from GenCom to give us the proposal. And so just one thing, in the packet, we had uploaded a recent proposal. They've actually updated it. So I emailed it out this morning and then we'll put it up on the screen, the updated proposal. So I think we've covered already where we're at with our current radio system and the deficiencies, and that we are expecting what's going to happen now, a proposal for a new radio system, essentially a rebuild of that. And like I said, there was a proposal that we had from GenCom, but in the last couple of weeks, we've introduced another possible component of that. With what was going to be proposed, we were already looking at 2 new tower sites that were likely going to be 2 new tower builds that we would have to build and operate. That's still the case. And then we'd also still be on towers in Hayward. And the other component is getting onto the LCO WOJB radio tower, which we haven't got to yet. But the new component, though, is that we've engaged with a company called Bug Tussle. They're primarily a internet phone provider. They're from the east side of the state. They worked with a number of counties over there and some right next to us now. And they've partnered up with those counties by putting in fiber rings with tower sites connected to those fibers for the purposes of having cell phone providers lease them and selling fixed wireless broadband to consumers. And in some of those counties, the counties have used those as the infrastructure for their public safety networks. And so what you're going to hear, what Gary's done is amended or given us a new proposal that shows kind of alternate 1, what we were looking at doing and owning our sites and building sites, and alternate 2, which would be potential partnership with Bug Tussle to partner up with them, be a part of their fiber ring and tower network, and put our infrastructure on their towers. So I'm going to let Gary do his presentation first. Then we'll talk a bit more about Bug Tussle. Mitch from Bug Tussle is on by Zoom. So and you'll see how that affects the cost and how the system would operate.
This one here does look like maybe one of the old ones, because that shows the old system.
Okay, let me,
The one I sent you this morning. I can bring it up too if you.
I can do it. I'm gonna take it over, Lynn.
And while he does that, I'm Gary Pelletier with GenCom, General Communications. That's what the GenCom stands for, General Communications. I'm here with Aaron and Justin from our office in Eau Claire. We've got 5 locations throughout Wisconsin, and we do a lot of countywide communication systems and 911 systems. There you go.
All right.
Okay, so next slide. And there's a little bit about our 4-location Wisconsin. So we've been, like I said, business a long time. Next slide. Okay, so right now, what we are proposing, and this is, working with the sheriff's department on this, is to do a 6-site system to improve your radio coverage here in the county. 2 of the sites will be existing sites, but we are looking at 4 new sites, basically. You have towers in these areas now, but they're not sufficient enough to cover the entire county. So we have worked with, and I think the sheriff's department at one time had talked to the Indian Reservation. They do have a 400-foot broadcast tower, looking at working with them to go onto their broadcast tower, as well as a tower in Birchwood. It's actually in Rusk County, but we currently use that as a Washburn County tower, and it provides pretty good coverage in that area of the county. Meteor, there is a tower that we're on down there now, but it's not sufficient enough. There's also a Department of Transportation, a DOT tower there, but that thing's full. So we're looking at building a new tower in that area. Was a part of the first proposal for the option 1. And then Loretta, there is nothing out in that area for towers that serves the county. There are a couple leased tower site options, but one of the leased options was $2,500 a month. And so we're looked at, what if we just build the tower, then you own the tower? I do know the state is looking for a tower out in that area in the future for their new radio system they're putting in for the state. So that may play a part. But there's other options now with Bug Tussle, and I'll go over those shortly. So those, like I said, those are the 4 channels that we're looking at, though, or 3: law, a fire EMS, and paging channel. This will be a simulcast system, which means all the towers transmit at the same time. Whereas currently, sometimes you only have one tower talking at a time, where this is everything gets out. So anybody on the east side of the county can hear what's going on in the west, and so forth. And then if you have a portable radio sitting in Hayward, you can talk to a squad radio on the other side of the county by the simulcast technology.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Why would the law be digital channel and the rest would be analog?
Good question. So digital does carry further, but a lot of the fire service communities do not like the digital. They don't trust the digital. Now more people are going to digital, and that is an option. It's easy with this equipment to add digital, and you can see when I show you some of the coverage maps, digital is better. But so a lot of the fire folks like to have analog. I would love to put that on digital as well, if they're willing to do that.
But ain't the county on digital now? Ain't there a lot of problems with that?
Yes.
Am I wrong, or?
Yeah, yes. And some of that is because the tower heights are not very well throughout the county, and that's part of the problem. So it's not really because of the digital technology.
Okay.
And that's a reason that there's not a trust in digital, because they're having problems currently. So, but what we've done, like in Washburn County, fire dispatch is done on digital, and once they get to scene, then they can go to an analog fire ground channel.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Haley.
Excuse me, don't we run, or, yeah, I guess run the fire department's communication systems, in a sense?
Yeah.
So part of the issue is.
Would you want to come up here and step up here so everybody can hear you, sir? Thank you.
So the fire pages are all analog. Okay, and so what currently happens is they get paged out on analog. And then when they respond on the Wiscom channel for fire.
Wiscom is the Wisconsin communication system. That's a statewide system.
Yeah.
It's currently in the early stages of being replaced over the next 5 years. There's a new contract out that will be replacing that system. So, but there are a lot of deficiencies in this area because they don't have enough tower sites in the area.
But that's why, you could have them communicate similarly where they're paged on one channel, and then respond on another. That's a digital channel. But what you'll find is that a lot of times they just prefer to just talk on one channel, is what we typically see up here, is that they want to get paged on the same channel that they can talk on. The downside of that is it ties up traffic, meaning, so if you're on scene at a fire and you're talking on that repeated channel, dispatch can't page anybody else out because you're talking. So that's why splitting them, paging is one thing, talking back is another.
Yeah, you currently don't have a paging only channel.
Then why don't we
Oh,
just,
do they? They
why don't we just make them go on the digital system? Prefer is one thing, but if it's gonna clog up a system, it could hurt someone out there, or, the page.
Understand.
That doesn't-
That's exactly what's going on, is you're gonna be paged on one channel, you're going to respond on another. So there's 3 channels, one's for law enforcement, one's for fire and EMS to talk on, one's strictly for me. Because otherwise you run that risk. You get one.
I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, that costs too much and then nobody else can get.
Andy?
And I was just gonna mention, correct me if I'm wrong, we provide the network, but they're responsible for their own equipment and radios and pagers. So we'd have to get them to upgrade themselves to digital if we were gonna want them to do digital.
Most of them have that capability currently. It's just, it's just what they prefer.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, so you can carry on about.
Oh, yeah, it is, I talked about the simulcast, so there is redundancy, so if you lose a tower, another tower in the system takes over that simulcast control. And then right now, we're looking at a microwave option to connect the towers, because all these new radio systems are networked, just like your computers at home. So we have to provide network connections. We can either do that via a microwave, which is a point-to-point antennas pointing at each other to connect those, or through a fiber system. And with Bug Tussle, they're brought in that I think we can be able to use fiber with that and save the county some money. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And if you can do the next slide, thanks. So yeah, sorry about that. I started going, so these are the 6 sites for option 1, and this is when you're building your own towers. Hayward, there is a tower site you're on now outside of town, which is sufficient. We are proposing to keep that water tower site in Hayward. You have larger buildings in town here, and to get the best in-building coverage, because when you get into buildings, the RF signal, just like your cell phones, sometimes you'll start losing signal. So by adding a site here will help fill in, especially in your schools and hospital and things like that. And then I talked about the 4 new sites in those areas. Birchwood is currently a site. There's a building there and everything. I do know Mosaic charges the Washburn County $1,000 a month to use that tower site. And then the Meteor site, we're looking at building a tower there because there's not a sufficient tower for what we need to provide the coverage in the county. And Loretta is also a build site. I did say there is a company that owns a tower there. They're looking at $2,500 a month for the initial estimate, and that would go up over time. So, next slide.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Water tower in the town of, or village of Winter.
Yes.
Why wouldn't that work instead of putting a new tower in Loretta? What doesn't it have I know the concern too is Connors Lake, southern Sawyer County. And I know right now the way things are, when the deputies or the ambulance or whoever is out on a call out there, they have a hard time communicating back and forth with dispatch.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering, wouldn't the Winter water tower work?
Yeah, the water tower, we did coverage maps from the water tower. I don't have those, but I can share those later. The water tower does not provide sufficient coverage really over the Loretta Draper area.
Okay.
And that's the problem. So if we move it that way, it'll cover Winter because it gets pretty high in that area by Loretta. And there's actually a couple towers right there, one on the north side of 70 and one on the south side.
And I know I've asked this before, but the tower in Loretta would definitely cover southern Sawyer County out by the Connors Lake area.
Yes, it would also cover that southeastern part of and by the forest. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So
John.
that new tower then in Loretta would take care of Winter, and it
Yes.
would also take care of the very southern part of the county.
Yes.
Okay,
And I've got some maps here showing some of that here.
already, good, thank you.
Okay, next slide. That just kind of gives you a detail. There'll be radio equipment at each site. The current design, Pipestone, is a state site. We don't need it for transmit and receive, but we needed to get that microwave signal over. But that will not be applicable if we end up working with Bug Tussle and providing fiber. Because as long as we have a network, whether it's fiber or microwave, that'll work. Next slide. So this is what you're looking for digital coverage. And right now I'm just showing portable coverage, mobile coverage, 100% of the county. And the difference between the mobile coverage is you have a squad radio. Often it's 50 watts, sometimes they're 100 watts with a outside antenna. So you got a big antenna, high powered radio, you can have coverage throughout the county. But when the officer steps out of the car and he's got a 5 or 6 watt portable radio with a little antenna, that's when he can have some problems. So if I showed you the mobile, it'd be all blue, it'd be good. But right now with this design, if you can see, the outdoor coverage is pretty good throughout the entire county on a portable radio. So right now, if an officer gets out of a car on Highway 70 in some areas, I don't think he can talk. He actually has to go back to the car to talk. And then indoor coverage, indoor simulates like a wooden house, single story, double story, smaller home. You do lose some coverage because you've got, windows and glass and construction material around the house. So you do see that in the southeast, you do lose some coverage if you're going indoors anywhere in that area. There is is it the Flambeau Correctional Facility down there? The state does have a tower down there. We actually looked at that. If you really wanted coverage in that area, you could work with the state maybe to go on their tower to add a site down there as well. But I don't know how often, and there's not a lot of roads by that area either. So next slide. So that's the digital. So this is what analog looks like. And I told you before that digital is better. And if the fire wanted to use digital for dispatching, they definitely have better coverage. So you lose a little coverage you see in the southeast on the outdoor coverage on analog, and definitely you lose a lot more coverage indoors. But like I said before, a lot of times they use fire to get to a scene, but once they're at the scene, they'll often go to a simplex channel, just a radio to radio channel on the scene, like a fire ground channel. But for EMS, if they have to go into a house, in some of these areas that are in white, it's not going to work very well in a house. So if that's why, digital would be better for the fire service to use that.
So, excuse me. So when the fire department's on scene and they go to this other, what'd you call
Digital?
it? No,
Oh, no, fire ground.
Fire-
It's just it's a radio to radio, so you're not going
kind of like
to a radio
an
tower.
FRS type radio or?
Yep, yes, exactly.
So then other like EMS, police, they can't hear them.
Yes, only people near that scene that are listening on that channel can hear it.
So if they needed help,
They'd have to go back to this or to their vehicle sometimes to talk.
so
There are,
they're,
and I don't know, you guys have any vehicle repeaters? I don't know if the fire does. There are these vehicle repeaters you can install that some folks do, but yeah, that is a concern.
yeah, that's why I say again, why don't they just,
And the digital, like I said, you can see it on the maps, the digital does play a lot better. Next map that's going to show pager coverage. And pager is analog. And you asked about digital. Not many people are doing digital paging for fire service. They, back 99% still use an analog type paging where they carry a pager on the hip. They page out a voice message. And because now you've got a small pager with an internal antenna, and the coverage goes down even further than a portable radio. So outdoors, you have pretty good coverage. Indoors, a lot of your fire service folks, and have, if they live in the area, but if you're in some of these rural areas, you may miss paging indoors. So, and even we talked about the Wiscom state system, they don't provide fire paging. All the counties have their own system for fire paging. So I call this the most likely tower map. And so we kind of did the colors so you can see which towers really cover those certain areas. So you can see how Loretta covers quite a bit, but that Meteor Tower actually covers quite a bit of the southeast. And without Birchwood, you actually lose coverage in the southwest if you don't have that Birchwood tower. So it doesn't look like it covers a lot, but it does fill that void down there that you had nothing before. Next slide. This is option 2. This would be using fiber optics, working with Bug Tussle with their towers rather than putting up towers. And I'll show you some pricing later. Putting up your own towers with some buildings is over $1 million. It's a little over 500,000 per tower. By the time you put up a tower, put up a building, do the fencing, the road, the gravel, you're building a tower from scratch. With Bug Tussle is putting up towers now. They have some existing towers, they're adding some more towers. And if we can share towers with them, that could save the county some money. We would still use the Courier, say that right, the reservation, we'd still use their tower. But then Wooddale, Meadowbrook, and Winter. So the Wooddale would really replace the one in Birchwood. Meadowbrook would kind of replace the Meteor Tower. And the Winter Tower, they call it Winter, it's probably a little closer to Loretta, but there is a tower they have there that would cover that area. So the red lines just depict that would be hooked up by fiber, and the green, we would still use microwave.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
At Meadowbrook, where would that be placed at in Meadowbrook?
I can show you exactly on Google Earth in a second if you want to see that, but
Well-
there is actually a tower there now, I believe. Was that one of the existing or is that one they're building? Yeah,
It's,
Let Mitch answer that, he's on.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's, if I may, it's on.
Next slide. So
It's on
here's
highway-
here's the coverage off of using their towers. Now, one thing about their towers, when we do these maps, we have to go to a certain height on a tower. We were limited on some of the heights. We couldn't go to the top. They wanted us to go below the top, about 50 feet below the top. So that does affect some coverage, especially outdoors in the southeast. Ron, you talked about that before. So the outdoor coverage off of the Winter Tower and the Meadowbrook doesn't cover that southeast as the other towers. So now the other, so if you build a tower, you'd probably get better coverage in that area. Or if they're willing to add on to the tower and you can go higher up, but that's something you can work out with Bug Tussle. So that's the one limitation, that you lose some coverage in that area. And then the indoor, you lose even more coverage down there. And that's with the digital. Go to the analog next page. So, yep, or was that analog? Okay, yeah, so it gets a little worse in some of those areas when you're on the analog systems, outdoor and indoor. And next page is to show paging. So we still have pretty good paging countywide, especially in the populated areas. Next page. Let's go there. So there's the most likely server tower map on that, where you can see what each tower is going to serve. And we've got now Hayward in there as well, but you can see the Indian Reservation Tower, it covers quite a bit, especially in the north east part of the county. Okay, next page. So this is basically a breakdown between the two. And you can do a combination of these. So meaning, let's say you're on 2 Bug Tussle towers and then you build one, or you do a combination. But worst case scenario, if you're building towers, putting up new buildings, shelters, and a full microwave system, you're looking just shy of 2.5 million. And as you can see, half of that pretty much is just new shelters and building or towers. And then on the option 2 is also now you take out a lot of the money from building towers by using some Bug Tussle towers. We're proposing outdoor buildings rather than basically it'll be a shelter pre-manufactured. You see the cell buildings next to cell towers. We'll be putting in buildings like that. There are options for outdoor cabinets that brings some of the price down, but trying to work on equipment outdoors, and if you ever want to expand in the future, you're limited to the size of the cabinet. So I always recommend doing the building. So you're basically between 1.5 to 2.5 in that range for the radio system. Any questions on that?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yes.
So you said we could mix them.
Yes.
And how would that work if we mix them as far as coverage and cost?
Again, and on any radio project, you kind of come up with, these are the preliminary towers. Now, let's work on, okay, we know it's going to be this many sites. Now we got to look at site location. And if we want to optimize coverage in one area, we could look for a bigger tower or a different tower. And that's why I said, worst case scenario, you put up your own towers, you're at 2.5. But so let's say you use 2 of Bug Tussles instead of 3 towers and you put one up, that's why it's going to fall in the range. But if you use the 3 Bug Tussle towers, that's the option on the right. So that's the difference.
You say worst case scenario, that's money wise,
Yes,
but that's as far as coverage.
you actually get better coverage on option 1.
Right. So
So, yeah.
in my eyes,
But, and part of that
It's
is,
the
and
other
I
way
think
around.
that's something we can talk to Bug Tussle about, is if we could get a spot higher on the tower, we can improve coverage in some of those areas. So. Yeah, we'd have to find out. Some of the towers they're building, so we did a project in Jefferson County and they were looking at putting up like a 250-foot tower. So we like, hey, if you do a 300-foot tower and we can go to the top 50 feet and you have everything below, that'll be better for us. And that's what they ended up doing, is building actually a taller tower for the county. It costs to, well, it depends on, I mean, and I think Andy will talk about the cost and the Bug Tussle, the stuff, but that is one thing. So the Bug Tussle, or that was called Bertram Wireless did it, but they went ahead and put up a bigger tower, but we talked to them before they put it up. And we've also, like, we did a project in Dane County. They went onto an existing state tower. There wasn't enough room. They actually added 20 feet to the top of the tower for that part, for the county to go on the state tower. So the county paid for it, but they were able to use the tower for free then. So there are some options that we can work with if we need some higher coverage. And we can do that. The modeling we do in our maps, we can say, hey, how do we fix the southeast? How much higher do we need to go?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate where we're at as of today, I mean, been working with GenCom for months to get their proposal together. Brought Bug Tussle into the picture 3 weeks ago, maybe less than that. They've had a chance to have a call with
Last
GenCom.
week, we had a call with them.
Basically, it's been, where we're at today is GenCom has put their radio proposal together, these sites. Bug Tussle came in and asked them, what would you do? They said, well, these are the sites we would like, because they're looking also at cell phone coverage and other services they're going to provide. That's where we've and they've worked on option 2 based off of those sites. So we haven't had the next conversation that I hope we can have on tower heights, tower locations. Can we, because you're right, the option 2 is less coverage than option 1. But, if we add a tower, or who adds it, where's it located? That would be the next step to kind of work through that.
Because actually, one of my concerns, and I'm sure it's the committee's concern, is coverage.
Mhm.
Safety reasons for police, EMS, fire departments.
Mhm.
So I guess that's where I'm headed at towards this, but I'm like I say, I'm open to whatever. But the better coverage is going to be better.
I agree. I mean, option 1 does definitely provide better coverage. You have almost 100% outdoor coverage in the county. I mean, any county system, they design it for 95% coverage or better. You're never going to get 100% everywhere. But
Exactly.
if you saw the option 1, the outdoor coverage on a portable radio was pretty good. And that's been an issue in the past, is when an officer gets out of a car, you're at a scene, EMS, they want to be able to pick up that radio and talk to somebody.
Okay.
If they're at an area that they can't even talk on a portable radio, that definitely is a problem.
Mr. Srolsky, got something?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that these are probably still preliminary figures, but that amount difference, option number 1 is the better coverage
Mhm.
than option number 2. That area down there in the southeast is getting more and more populated now. And the sheriff, the EMTs, and that are going to be spending more time in that area. I think it'd be similar to when you build a new courthouse. You spend a little extra money and you're covered for 25 years.
You
I think
get what you pay for.
it's a smart
And
thing.
that's the other reason I said, and if Bug Tussle, if we can't get higher on that Winter Loretta area, maybe you do put up a tower there, or maybe you can lease, there's SBA owns a tower over there, maybe you can lease from them. But, and then you still use their towers in Wooddale and Meadowbrook. So that's why I said there could be a combination. Maybe for 2 million, you can do that option. So that's why I'm like, that's gonna be your range that you're gonna be between to provide coverage. But I do agree, I do like the coverage of option one a lot better.
Coverage is the thing.
Yes. And you know, in talking with Bug Tussle, sometimes they have plans for other towers in the future, like maybe by Oxbow or something that would provide coverage down in that south area.
Well, and I think like Andy's, your point is, we're in the crawl phase right now. You guys got have a lot to, get together with.
Yeah, we just did the map for
Tussle.
option two on Friday.
Yeah.
So, because we just had a meeting with Bug Tussle last week.
Yeah, we are, like I said, we are
Together.
definitely in the crawl
Mhm.
stage right now, so.
Yeah,
It's just some little information.
yep, and it's gonna go from a crawl to a sprint just because of some timing issues to.
Sure.
Yep. Could you just address one technical thing too on the tower construction and sites
Mhm.
are a big expense. And we were planning on microwave backhaul under option one. Option two, if we were to use Bug Tussle, all of their towers will be connected to fiber. So that changes the backhaul.
That does change the backhaul, that's why option two is less expensive. And the other thing you could do is, even if you put up your own tower, maybe Bug Tussle is gonna provide fiber in front of that tower, and you can go onto on that fiber. So you can still use a fiber. So right now, worst case scenario is microwave everywhere, but if we could do a combination of fiber on some of the new towers that maybe you build or lease from somebody else, then that's gonna bring the price down as well, but still provide that coverage.
Mr. Savitsky, you got something to say?
Yeah, for these towers, if we built them or in the past when other municipalities have built these towers, is there a way that we could sell our towers to like Verizon and other companies that would help
Yes, you could.
offset the price for having our own?
Build it, usually little more money sometimes, but if you build it for extra capacity for allow cellular carriers, because they have the same problem. They don't have coverage everywhere. And I know the state, what was that? Yeah, or anywhere. So yes, definitely you could lease back. Besides Bug Tussle, I know some folks, if you work with the state, sometimes they're looking at putting up towers. But in Loretta area right now with Wiscom, and what I talked about before, the Wisconsin radio system, they're actually on VHF. So your frequencies are VHF. VHF covers further, but it's not as good as in buildings. So most larger cities like Milwaukee will be on an 800 meg system, 800 megahertz, which is where the original cell phones back 30 years ago were all around the 800 meg. But so you needed more towers to cover the area. The new state of Wisconsin system is going from a VHF system to a 800 megahertz system. And everybody will have to buy new radios on that 800 meg system. And currently, some of your operations, you do run off of Wiscom. But I know the state's looking at, but they have proposed a tower in Loretta. I believe they're looking at leasing that SBA tower, but if you work with the state, sometimes maybe they'd be willing to build a tower and you share it with the state. So those are some things that, like Andy said, once you go down that path, we can look at other options where we can provide coverage or maybe new towers and share the expense of those towers with another entity.
Do we know that when this Wisconsin system switches on, will we be required to use that system? Do you guys know?
You're not required to.
No. We're a Wiscom user now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One caveat to that would be the highway department. The highway department uses Wiscom exclusively. They use the current Wiscom system. So they've never, that I've ever been approached by the highway department, do their own thing. My assumption would be they're planning to continue to use that. that system.
Now, one
Transit
thing about the
also
Wiscom, what was that?
Transit also uses it.
Transit does, okay.
So the Wiscom, the contract was just signed between L3 Harris, which is, they're the old GE radios, if you remember from, 40s and 50s and 60s. The GE is now owned by a company, L3 Harris, which is a big defense contractor. Well, they won the statewide contract for Wiscom. They just signed that agreement on, I think, the 23rd of May. Hasn't even been a press release. The state and L3 Harris are working together to do a press release. And part of that contract is going to offer discounted radio pricing because they know people have to buy new radios. And the state is also looking at doing some county matches that the state will pay 80% of the radio and you only pay 20%. So the cost of buying a new radio when Wiscom does come along, it is going to be a lot less expensive than, because some of these radios are $5,000 to $10,000.
So will those radios work on our system?
Yeah, so what we're proposing, and most of the customers, they're gonna be buying multi-band radios, dual band radios. It'll cover the VHF band and the 800, 700 band. So, and Wiscom itself is going to have an interoperability channel on VHF. So people that don't have the radios can talk and provide some interoperability. But the one thing with this Wiscom, right now, the first plan phase is to do the southeast Wisconsin area as a beta, basically. That's Milwaukee down to Racine and Kenosha County. Don't know when they're going to get to the northwest. In the beginning, it was the last part of the phase. It could be 6 years before that system gets live here. And the issue is now is if you wait for that system to come along, you're going to have 6 years of poor coverage and officer safety issues.
Go ahead, Mr. Alvarado.
I was just gonna say what he said, so I want to make sure you knew that we brought that up, I think, early on. We've talked about it internally that, yes, they're gonna rebuild Wiscom. They've been talking about it for 5 years. Now they've signed a
It
contract.
took 1.5 years for the state to sign the contract. And Harris is very aggressive. I had a meeting with Harris yesterday on this. They're very aggressive. They want to get this whole project done in 3.5 years. But the state's like, no, that's too fast.
Yeah.
So the state is kind of, they really want to go for it, but the state and some of the sites, like, for example, if they are looking at building or leasing a tower by Loretta, they haven't even talked to the people that own the tower yet to come up with and the state's got to do an agreement. I mean, to do that build out, it'll be 2030. I mean, I hate to say it.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that because, and the legislation last year adopted a grant program that they'll have to help counties upgrade their radio systems.
Mhm.
And Wiscom users will have priority for the grant.
Yes.
But like Gary said, they're starting in the southeast. We don't know when they're gonna rebuild up here. We don't know what the grant program is gonna be. If we wait for all that, it's probably gonna cost us the amount of money we might be able to get from grants is probably less than what increased cost will be.
And the radios
Rebuild the
you
network.
have now at the sheriff's department, I believe most of them will work on all this new system. They don't have to buy new radios. The fire departments, if they stay on analog, they don't have to buy it. If they want to go to digital, some of them would have to buy some new radios because the digital technology uses a different modulation. So some might, but you're only putting money into the system now. So in another 5, 6, 7 years, whenever they get Wiscom working up there, at that time you use that state money to help fund new radios, and then you have multi-band radios that continue to talk on Wiscom for your interoperability, as well as talking on your VHF system.
Yeah, we've
Yep.
worked with the sheriff's department now on as they purchase new radios, as things, break and whatever else, that they're upgradable for that as the future goes forward.
And the other thing, and we're the L3 Harris dealer also, so we'll be helping install this Wiscom system once it comes alive. But there is a way that you can take their system, your county system if you want, and do a network connection into Wiscom so that you can provide an interoperability between the two systems.
Well, I'd like to get this rolling just as fast as we can, and get an update on what we need so we can get through it,
Mhm.
get it going. So, but I want another question.
bake sale.
You were talking about adding, to the Bug Tussle Towers.
Yes.
Did you have a close figure on that?
No,
Where that would
because,
put?
I mean, it's cheaper than building a new tower. I know that. But, it depends on how they built the tower. Most of the time, there's enough capacity to add on to the tower. Sometimes there's some more concrete they put in the ground. But I mean, it could be, a couple $100,000 to add on. It depends on how much. You're adding on 20 feet, you're adding on 50 feet or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And depends on the size of the tower that they built in the first place. Some towers are smaller and they can't handle that extra load that goes to the top. So that's something that's very preliminary that we'll be working with them throughout time. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Marshall.
And this would ensure, well, both option one and option two would ensure that we still have radio coverage in every school in the county, LCO, Winter, Hayward schools, and the hospital and everything. In the Sawyer County Courthouse, would it?
Yeah,
We still have
I
coverage?
definitely have to look at where all those schools are. I mean, if you kind of saw the maps, the closer you are to the tower, the better the coverage. If you're at the very, pretty far away, 10 miles away from some of these towers, I can't guarantee, but it's also the size of the school.
Right.
By having in fact, right here shows Hayward. At first, we were looking at what do we do? Do we need that water tower in Hayward as a site? Because that added on a couple $100,000. Well, without the water tower, that's your coverage in Hayward for big building. This is what's called 30 dB. That's like a bigger school or a hospital or a lower level, like at the sheriff's department. So by keeping that water tower site, now you have really good coverage in Hayward. But on those other areas, like you said, Winter, if we select that Bug Tussle Tower, and we can do maps, and that's part of this detail, we move into a detailed design review. This is a preliminary design. And so we want to figure out in the coming months, how do we get the coverage of option one and more the price of option two? How do we kind of leverage Bug Tussle, leverage maybe the state, leverage other entities on providing you the best coverage without, or best price without sacrificing coverage.
Very good presentation. I have a question for Andy now. I know that we have to give Bug Tussle an answer soon. And when will their next meeting with these guys, will we be able to have a chance to hear another presentation prior to the go ahead with Bug Tussle, or what's the?
Yeah, I mean, based on where we're at today and the presentation Gary's put together for us today, and what I'm hearing, I mean, and I think Mitchell from Bug Tussle's on to kind of explain their program beyond just the tower sites. But I would say that with the next step is we're gonna, and I think Mitchell's heard all this, that coverage is important. So how do we get the coverage that we have with proposal one by working with Bug Tussle?
Mhm.
And I think there's other things that we'll have to talk about as a county, like, Bug Tussle, they'll have tower sites, we'll be on them, we have a long-term guarantee and access to those towers. So we're not tower owners. Like it's been brought up though, if we were tower owners, maybe there's more revenue options, but we're also a tower maintainer now as well. And then the fiber versus microwave is added advantage to us. Looking at the totality of both proposals, but definitely, yes, before we go ahead with either of them, you're gonna see the proposal, you're gonna see the coverage, you're gonna see the price tag, and you're gonna have to say, yes, I wanna do that.
Yeah, like I said, we'll get into the detailed design, and once we have that design, okay, this is what we're looking at, then you can do that's what we're gonna get.
And I should point out, like, if you look at those maps, like this one, the red, we haven't even had that discussion yet with them. Because that's with the radio tower.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's been past conversations about that, but we would still need to come to some sort of, yes, that's all, the red is all off of the LCO radio tower.
And we also made an assumption, they have a building at the tower site that we can share that building. So, and you provide services to them with, emergency services to them. So I think they would be more than likely favorable in this to have you on there. And didn't you guys say somebody had a conversation with them at one time? They asked if you guys were interested. I thought that was one time, so, yeah. Okay. But definitely that would be an early conversation to say, we're looking at putting up a new radio system to provide better coverage in your community. You know, can we use your tower?
Well, the final say has got to come from the county board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
And the LCO tower, so I did do some, who do I talk to? And I've been directed to communicate with the general manager of the radio station, so he's got my message, so that's where we're at as of this week. I think you want to hear the Buck Tussle?
Yes, I'm interested in the Meadowbrook one.
Mitchell, you hanging with us there?
I am. Can you hear me? Nothing?
His hand's up.
Yeah, okay.
Is our volume up? So he's talking, we can't hear him.
Is that any better? Check again.
Click on click, okay. Click on that and go click on, it's muted right now, to the left, right there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
There we go.
That's better. Okay, good. So you weren't ignoring me when I tried to jump in. Really quick, Meadowbrook is sited, is not built yet. It's on Highway 27, just north of County Highway D.
That's the location.
That's the location that we have proposed. We have
That's what I kind of figured.
with
Okay.
the landowner there. Yep.
Okay.
Tower height in Sawyer County is entirely your decision, in that your zoning doesn't allow us to build tall towers. So if you would like additional height, there's a conversation to be had about what the rules are for building taller towers, but not particularly material to the discussion. We're willing to go up. We're willing to or go up in height to add towers to work at what makes sense as where your antenna placement goes on the towers, as well as kind of how the whole project fits together with what we're doing both in Sawyer County and with neighboring counties in particular. You can see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So the one thing before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, just because it came up a lot, I'm a Phillips native. My favorite lake in Wisconsin is Connors Lake. So I'm very sympathetic to southeastern Sawyer County. On the Price County side, we're planning on putting a tower playfully called Kimberly Clark here on county-owned property, which is right along W. So in the context of how do you guys get coverage in Connors Lake, there's definitely a holistic discussion that we can have with Price County as well as with GenCom and making sure that all of these things fit together. As we sit today, the towers we're looking at, the blue dots are proposed tower sites. No steel is in the air yet. The green dot is a tower in New Post that we built that Verizon is in the process of co-locating on. These two down here are sited and somewhere in the zoning process. So I have specific locations kind of queued up for these ready to go, whereas these others we can kind of push and shove as we need fit. They're just theoretical at this point. Okay. So starting back at the beginning, my name is Mitch Olson. I'm Chief Development Officer and General Counsel for Bug Tussle. My primary responsibility with Bug Tussle is administering what we call our Road to Digital Equality, which is our county partnership program. Though the outward-facing part of our company is definitely an internet service provider, at our core, we're really an infrastructure company. We've raised about $250 million over the past 3 years to do county-specific broadband infrastructure projects. So depending on how we find the county when we get there and what their current needs are, in very most cases, it's a combination of towers and fiber. The big thing about this and why it makes sense to partner with counties is one, the financing piece, which we'll get into at the end, but two, the use case for the assets that we put in. We do, as Andy mentioned, fixed wireless broadband internet. So for residences and small businesses that are within eyeshot of the tower, we sell internet packages there. We have a long and storied partnership with AT&T where we own and operate AT&T sites throughout Wisconsin for AT&T's network. So we have fixed wireless, we have cellular, and then on the fiber side, we have last mile residential business fiber connecting end users to the fiber network we put in, as well as transport long haul the holistic picture of the big network that we're trying to build throughout the state of Wisconsin. So what does that mean for Sawyer County? It means I am more than willing to build any amount of infrastructure that you want in the county, subject to it making sense for our business case. The primary driver on our business case is twofold. One is what is the internet broadband need in the area, and two, what is the mobility cellular need in the area. From a cellular standpoint, Sawyer County, as I'm sure you're all aware, is a pretty blank slate. There is definitely a need to put up a lot of towers and to cover a lot of area in Sawyer County that has, at this point, very poor levels of cellular coverage. So most towers in most areas, I'd love to build a tower because Lord knows we need it. And then on the other side, on the broadband side, you guys do have a decent leg up in the broadband space because of the investments that the local telephone companies have been making. And you have a number of them that are playing in the pool. You have Norvato and you have Mosaic and you have, I forget what the current names are and what the past names are. But if you're evaluating Sawyer County, which I got to do when I was putting this map together, a couple of layers that I like to toggle on and off to see what really matters. The first from the broadband side is this map here. This is the FCC's map of broadband serviceable locations. I do my coloring a little differently than you see out of the PSC, where green means they do not have a fiber or cable provider, yellow means they have one, red means they have more than one. So as you can see, as we sit today, you have good coverage kind of in the Hayward area, down south through Edgewater, Birchwood, and then a couple of the lake communities that are in between. Layer on top of that what has been funded through PSC broadband available grants. And you'll see that, okay, there's more fiber is definitely coming in the immediate future. You have the grant that Norvato won to do the greater winter area over here. You have the grant that Bevcom won down in the rural Exland Exchange. You have the grant that Mosaic won here to do the towns of Bassin and Sand Lake. I think this is part of another Norvato to kind of continue their growth and footprint. So from a residential broadband standpoint, what hasn't been done yet is the middle, which is good because that's an easy place to put a fiber ring, an easy place to make the connections and partner with these other carriers in the area to get our network from what we're building in Sawyer County to what we're building in Price County, what we're building hopefully with Rusk County in the future, as well as the other counties that we're partnering with through the state, and kind of put this all together. Does anyone have any questions about kind of that methodology, that discussion before I get too far into the funding side of it?
Any questions? No, I guess not.
Okay, so this project is funded through a conduit bond program, which I'll talk at a pretty elementary level on because I don't know how familiar anyone is with it. Conduit bonds are paid for by, they're a type of industrial revenue bonds that are paid for by the borrower, which in this case is a special purpose entity that will be called Bug Tussle 2. So Fond du Lac County is our primary partner in this and have been through thick and thin in every issuance of bonds that we've done. Fond du Lac issues bonds in an amount not to exceed $250 million in a series of tranches. We partner with participating counties to guarantee their pro rata share of the debt, is the language that's used in the agreement, which is to say that effectively Sawyer County would be co-signing on the bonds for our, it would be co-signing on the bonds to fund the project that we would build in Sawyer County. In exchange for that co-sign, we give a number of benefits to Sawyer County, specifically use of the fiber. There's a facilities access agreement that defines the terms and conditions there, but that's at no cost. Use of the towers, again, defined under the facilities access agreement, so that in where we find you today discussing an enhanced radio project, a public safety project, is we'd be happy to build those towers. No cost for you to utilize those towers. We just have to find the funding for it. And in addition to the use of the assets, you have a priority lien on those assets. So in the event your cosign does get called upon, in the event there's something wrong with Bug Tussle down the road, you have a priority lien on all the assets. So though you have to take over the payments, you do take over the assets as well. So you would get the towers that we're proposing to build and all the fiber that we're proposing to install here. So it effectively, as you sit and evaluate your options and investigate whether or not you would like to build towers, at the end of the day, that's kind of the worst case scenario with our program, is you would end up holding the towers and be responsible for paying for them. Obviously, the scope's a little bit different because we're planning on installing fiber as well, but fundamentally it's the same end game. So the number obviously on the project that I'm talking about is much higher than the number that we're talking about just for the public safety standpoint, because one, we're building more towers for the fixed wireless and carrier services footprints, and two, we're building a lot of fiber, which at $80,000 to $85,000 a mile is quite an expensive undertaking, but is effectively a future-proof asset and does obviously generate the revenue from the end users as well as the transport and all of the other things that we're looking to do connecting our network. So Andy, did the resolution make it into the packet today?
No, the resolution has not been put in the packet or given out yet.
Okay, so that's what my ultimate ask from the county will be, is that you pass 2 resolutions that detail the specifics of the program. The first of which is a statutory required notice resolution. Just in the event you're taking part in a debt financing exercise, you have a statutory requirement to put the public on notice. So that's the first resolution. That has a bit of a time horizon on it. We need to get that through as soon as we can, and definitely no later than July, but it's non-committal. So the ultimate decision of whether to participate with Bug Tussle doesn't come until the final resolution is presented to the full county board, which on our timeline would need to be in August. The total sticker price that we're looking for the project is $16 million. In addition to the benefits I mentioned earlier, I forgot to mention that we'll make a 40 basis point payment on the outstanding amount of the debt to Sawyer County on, I believe it's a biannual basis, but it comes out over the lifetime of the program to a little bit over $1.2 million. So in addition to getting access to the towers, to the fibers, to saving the money of constructing the towers and the fiber, it's also budget positive to you guys to the tune of about $1.2 million. So we've done this program. The first set of bonds we issued was in 2012. Those have already come and gone. We revitalized the program with COVID and issued another 5 counties worth of bonding in 2021, another 7 in 2022, and then another 3 in 2023. We have a lot of interest in this cycle. I'm engaged with 12 to 15 counties at this point about who's going to participate in this cycle. So it is a growing footprint, it is a growing network, and there are obviously benefits of the growing network based on the amount of participation that we have in this program. For you guys, you're definitely the furthest north and west that we're reaching at this point. Obviously 1 county northwest of Price County, but as we continue our growth footprints, as we are into Taylor County, we're hopefully going to be into Price County here, we are into Oneida. So as we continue kind of our growth through the state, kind of emanating from where we are on the east side, the network continues to grow, continues to add robustness and reliability, ultimately creating the best network throughout the state that we can.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, that's, Bug Tussle's they've been around for 20 some years or 20ish years. They rolled this out a few years ago, and like he said, counties over on the east side, Fond du Lac has always been the leader. I know they're in with Marathon, Oconto. So there's a number of other counties over that have been in this for a couple of years. Price County is going through this process right now. They're looking at the resolution next week, I believe. Someone's promising that they're going to go ahead there. So that's why, I mean, we reached out to them because of the tower site need that we're going to have, as well as it seemed to have multiple benefits to us for our project, but also, and we don't really talk about in public safety, but in the broadband side, like he had with his highlighted map, The PSC says that there's over 17,000 broadband subscriber area points in this, all those little dots. There's 17,000 of them. When all of this is said and done with what's already in yellow and what's underway now with funded projects, the number is going to be in the 5,000 range that are left. Of that 5,000, it's pretty honest discussion now amongst the providers that they just won't be able to serve all of them with hardwire fiber because there's just, from an economic standpoint, it doesn't make sense. So a wireless connection is probably going to be the best option for a lot. And with this fiber ring and fixed wireless capabilities, people will have access to broadband. When I say broadband, we're, to me, what's the standard now, Mitch? Is it 120?
Yeah, it's historically been 25.5.
25.5.
I lose track of, they have been kicking the tires on 120 for a long time. So I don't know if that's officially been the transition, but ultimately we're working our way towards as much fiber connectivity as we can get.
Right. And with having this, and even, I did make one phone call this week to one of our partners that we've done broadband with, just to give them a heads up that we're looking at this. We've had good partnerships with Bevcom and Nervado Mosaic. That's how we've gotten to this point. So I'll be letting them know that we're looking at this as an option, just as a courtesy. But this is just additional infrastructure in our county. This fiber will prove value to our project, what Bug Tussle would do, and then potentially other providers as well. So we've heard about the lack of broadband for our residents. We hear the cell phone complaints. This would help address some of those as well. Now, there are counties, and I don't know how many I know of, and we could go into a rabbit hole, like Taylor County, which they built a lot of this. They built a fiber ring. They bonded $10-12 million a few years ago. And I think Bug Tussle has gone in now and hooked into that fiber. I mean, those are options like we could have considered as well, of doing a big investment bond issue on our own and built this infrastructure. Bringing this forward because this is an option that gets us the infrastructure by just extending our debt capacity, which has risk, but at least it's not, a cash outlay every year, and we don't have to maintain it either.
So Andy, we're not gonna make no action on this today, right?
Well, if you told me no, then that would be,
Well, I think.
I think we need to do more work to
Exactly.
put the details together.
Yeah, put the details more together and bring it back to this committee next month.
Yep, and that's why I mentioned in the email, if you did get a chance, I sent it out last night just to start. Now that we've got this far, this is on the Economic Development Committee agenda next week and the Admin and Finance, since it kind of covers all of those aspects of what we do here.
Yeah.
What I heard though is coverage is priority, and we'll make that the priority to cover the county and try to bring in a project that is affordable as well.
I just, on the reason I asked about this Meadowbrook one, everybody knows here that I'm town board chair of the town of Meadowbrook. And when they heard that there was possibly a tower coming into our township, my phone rang off the wall.
Well, and I was maybe could have let out with that. All of this is contingent on the details that have to happen as a course of doing business. Fiber can only be laid where you have access to the right of way to do it. So you have to go out and negotiate that. Tower sites, whether we build them, Bug Tussle builds them, all are gonna have to go through the permitting process through zoning, which isn't always easy. And especially why, it's already been brought up on ours, zoning, what's allowable for tower heights. And, that's something we'll have to address as well.
Gary, what would be the time, what's the word I'm looking for? Timeframe. Thank you, sir.
So ultimately, the bonds will be issued in September of this year. We have the capacity to put in about 1,200 miles of fiber on an annual basis. So I would expect that the significant majority of the fiber would be put in the ground over the course of next summer. The tower building process through all of the regulatory and zoning realistically takes about a year. So, that's obviously contingent on getting landowners, getting tower sites sorted. So if there's a couple of shortcuts we can take, if the county has some property they're willing to host a tower that makes sense within the context of the network, there's a lot of shortcuts that you can find. But if you're sending letters, soliciting private landowners, negotiating leases, putting it into the regulatory and zoning process, which is at minimum through the regulatory side, 120 days. And then the actual build period, all that adds up to about a year.
Mr. Alvarado?
I was just gonna ask if that's a year time frame. I think it's the same regardless if it's them or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tower. We tend to be quick. On the tower building side, a lot of the other companies that you end up contracting with won't run regulatory and zoning simultaneously because there's a little bit of risk there because you might have to tweak or move something and then have some added cost in having to rerun some level of regulatory. But at the end of the day, the time is worth something.
So you say a year, let's say like 2026, 2027.
If, depending on the tenor and tone of the direction that we get here, if we theoretically we could start with tower siting as soon as I'm comfortable that this is a go. We could start tower siting, and if we get the towers leased before the end of the year, they'll be ready to construct by June 1st of next year. And so it's possible, albeit an accelerated timeline, and would take a lot to fall into place. But we could have, theoretically, we could be done with what you saw on the map by the end of 25.
I'd like to have all this in place, if possible, when it comes to this committee next month. Is that advisable? Can we do it? Because I know it's got to go through, well, it's going to be
No.
on the other committees too. I understand that part of it.
I think we wanted to have it ready for next month.
Okay,
So that would be our
okay, all right.
objective.
Will you pre-send out the resolutions? Or are we gonna look at those at the next meeting?
Yeah, we can send out the resolutions that he said, though we haven't had legal review of them yet, but they're pretty much standard bond authorization resolutions.
Mr. Hillig?
Oh, I am sorry.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Now's the time to ask. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Mitch. It's Gary Aaron.
Good information, you guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, number E, code enforcement specialist. She was here and left, huh?
She had a call,
Okay,
a business.
okay.
Her report's in there. I don't think I have anything to add to her reports. I mean, I can, advise that she's been busy. Unfortunately, we've had, and Sheriff's Department can give you more details if you want, but we've had some pretty messy animal control issues with some of our other criminal cases. So, and then she has been also working with public health on human health hazards and been following up on zoning complaints as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, her report looks really good. Looks fine to me, and reading this amendment to the animal control ordinance.
Yep. You want me to move on to that?
Yeah,
Okay. So this has actually been in the works for over a year. We started working out with the prior code enforcement officer.
yes.
So the resolution one, just is the language to adopt the amendment. But in addition, we did not have permit fees established for some of the things that were listed in our ordinance, breeding facilities, kennel permits, pet shop permits, et cetera. And so that's the resolution. The amendment, I'll run through that. So you can see on section 422 under E, where it says permit required, those match up with the permit fees. We just wanted somewhere to have the permit fees approved through the board. Then they'll be added to the schedule of fees and payments that we adopt annually as we make as we make amendments to it. On the page we're at, page 57 of the packet, we had added in some failure to renew some penalty permit fees that were not listed in the ordinance. Some of this was, being done, but was not in the ordinance itself. So that's why it's being amended so that it's enforceable. On page 58, it adds a section on declaring an animal as a public nuisance. Again, that's something that came up that we found as a shortcoming in our ordinance. The animal control officer did not have a way to deal with the calls we get for nuisance animals. So it allows them and establishes us some criteria. And then it also has an appeal process that if the animal control does issue a declaration of a nuisance animal to a animal owner, they can grieve that to this committee. That's in section 3 there. And then you get to make a decision as to uphold the declaration or to deny it.
I just got one question, Andy. When the animal control officer issues a citation,
Mhm.
I know from past experiences, from what our other ones told us, that a lot of times them, they don't get paid them fines. So how do we go about collecting that? I guess
They're
if they don't get paid, I don't know if they go in front of the judge or what, but
So, well, they default, the clerk of court ends up being the one to put it into their collection system. And so we just had a situation where somebody did not, even after it had gone through the clerk of courts, through a judgment, the judgment was placed on the person's property. That property is being foreclosed on, so we got notice now that
oh, okay.
as part of that foreclosure, we expect that we'll get paid.
Okay.
The reason we were noticed for the
It's an unpaid forfeiture, so
Yeah, thank you.
can place a lien on property that you have if you have unpaid civil contract.
right.
All right. Good.
So sometimes they do sit out there, but
Yeah.
eventually there's a way to collect on them.
Yeah, I've had one wrong. We can collect on them. It's a good thing and just
Yep.
for the county. So, okay.
And then kind of in that vein there, section 4.2.21 was added to and amended just to clarify the forfeiture schedule. So we adopted the same schedule that the clerk of courts has.
Okay.
The reason being is that our animal control or code enforcement issues citations, tracks. They use the standard, help me out. They issue the standard citation, which corresponds with the schedule that when you get a citation, you don't just pay. There's like a portion of that is the citation amount. And then there's the portion that gets the jail surcharge, the crime lab and drug, the court support. So it might be a $25 citation, but at the end, the actual amount you're paying is $100. Yeah. So we just, yes. Yep. That's the same for the citations they issue. So we just adopted the court schedule as part of the ordinance.
Oh, so you need a motion to either approve this or disapprove it?
Approve and send to the county board.
Okay. All right. I'll make a motion to approve this animal control ordinance amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by me and a second by Mr. Helwig to send it up or to approve the ordinance. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Now it goes on the county board. Okay.
Search and rescue, I think is the next.
Yep. Go ahead, Andy.
So we discussed that last month and we were waiting for the insurance company to review the MOU agreement that we had drafted between the county and search and rescue. No changes have been made. This is the same as last month. The insurance company has reviewed it and is satisfied with the level of oversight that the sheriff's department provides to search and rescue, as well as verifying the training and standard operating procedures. So they are good with it. So I'm just looking for a motion to approve and I think send to the county board.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Sawyer County Search and Rescue Team and the Sawyer County Sheriff's Department.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Helwig. Do we have a second? Mr. Sorolski.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the MOU and send it on to the county board. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, number 11. Child Support Department. They're not here, but we have a report.
Can we start requesting her to be here?
Yeah, we can. She used to come to all of them. Andy, do you know why she don't anymore? Or is she busy or?
No, I think just the, feels that the report's been sufficient. If you want her to come, she'll come.
Well, Marge comes and says, hey, here's my report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that what you want, Marshall?
Or quarterly.
Or even quarterly at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a respectful.
I mean, I believe they're here so we can ask questions to their report if need be. So I agree with them that she should be here.
Well, like I say, it's a respect.
Right. Okay. You don't have any questions with her report right now then? Okay. All right, number 12, emergency services. Ambulance and medical examiners update. Mr. Fremmel on or?
Mr. Fremmel had to fill in as a paramedic today, so he was gonna be on if he was able to be on.
He just got sent to a call.
Okay.
Okay.
He's still is.
Yeah, he's giving a good report, I think. You have any questions with this report? I don't. Okay. Number B, offer from Round Lake for ambulance building site.
Yep.
Okay.
So let me get to that here in a second.
What's
So
that?
we had had a couple, John and I had a conversation with a couple board members, county board members, who had the town of Round Lake reach out to them regarding a interest in having the county establish a ambulance garage location in the town of Round Lake. Now, they do have one. There is an ambulance in the town of Round Lake that is supported by volunteers, you know, the people who are not our full-time employees, but who, if they're available, put themselves on call. There's a call in that area, they get called, they go to the ambulance, they go to the call. Town of Round Lake is interested in seeing like a 24-hour base established like we have here in Hayward or in the town of Ojibwa. And so we said, well, let's make this formal. We asked the town to put something in writing and send to us. So that's what they've done to, I guess, get us going on this conversation. When John and I met with a couple of the board members who were aware of this interest, we have not moved ahead on financials. But I mean, basically I can tell you that if we were to set up another 24-hour crew like we have, it's another, and this is just a ballpark amount, it's $750,000 when you count in staff time and having a base, roughly, actually it's 1.5 total, but you figure the runs, you can account for half of some of that will be offset by revenue. The other things we've talked about, just kicking this around, is that, we have a second crew here in Hayward most of the time now that we're trying to get to 24 hours. In theory, you could put that third crew out in, so it'd be a crew here, a crew in Ojibwa. You can put a crew out in Round Lake then. It would be somewhat of a misnomer that they're there though, because as soon as Ojibwa takes off for a call and goes somewhere, you're going to rotate your other ambulances to have central coverage for the rest of the county. Same thing if the Hayward ambulance takes a call, you're probably going to move that ambulance into Hayward because this is where the majority of our calls are. So even if you have a 24-hour rig and crew there, they're not going to be there 24 hours of the day to cover calls. Most likely, I believe they'll be the first crew to move to a new location. If they go out on a call, you're probably not going to do too much shifting because you've already got a pretty good response time with Hayward. That's the other thing that we started to look into, and I'll mention why we had to start looking into it. The maintenance of effort is just, what the advantage of having a call out in the town around, or an ambulance in the town around Lake. You would have quicker, more responsive coverage to that area of the county. Now, it's not the highest call volume, and right now it's served primarily by Hayward, which I don't remember the amount of time. I want to say it's within 20 minutes, which for a rural ambulance service isn't unusual to have that long of a response time. So we haven't really, put this in, formal, reviewed it and said this is what it would look like. But I wanted to put it on the agenda so you're aware that we've had a offer of land that we would build a building on. We would be responsible for that cost. Then we'd be responsible for whatever operational annual cost would be for that building. But they.
And the
they-
personnel.
And the personnel.
And in all reality, to make that happen, we'd have to hire. Because what you just mentioned, as far as, moving these people, the ambulances around. But so in order to really make that facility worthwhile, we'd have to hire the personnel to run it.
Some, but like I
24/7.
said, we're getting close to wanting to have three full-time crews. So we have somebody available to do transfers. So we could move this, and right now it's 2 crews here. Right now it's probably like 1.75 of the time we have.
All the time?
Yeah, we're trying to get to 2. Because we used to have 3 on and three personnel in Jibba, 3 here in Hayward. So we're going to 2 there and 4 here. So that we have more availability to do transfers. We could move that second rig out to Round Lake, but we're having a problem doing that even because we are still short personnel.
Right, and it's hard, we have a hard enough time getting personnel.
Correct.
So to man that.
Yeah.
You're,
There really wouldn't be any additional revenue. The call volume is not going to change by having an ambulance out there.
right.
It would
but
just
really,
reduce the cost.
when you mentioned
response
that
time.
we'd be able to offset that, in all reality, we wouldn't.
No, not to the level that we, no.
So they have an ambulance out there now stored.
Yes, we have it stored in their fire department or in their town garage. It's there, but it's not a full
So then
base.
that one would be moved over to, if we do this, that would be moved over to our facility? Or would they keep that in?
No,
No,
it's our ambulance.
it's our ambulance.
Oh, it's our
It's our
ambulance. Okay,
So
all
we go
right.
to the new building.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
all right. I just
New
want to make sure I
facility,
understand it. Okay. All right.
So it's gonna be on the future agendas or what?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wanted to hear what your thoughts were, like how, maybe we can put something together on the cost to do this, cost of a building, what it would change on the operations. It would really have to be part of our budget for next year to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Start,
Yeah, I would like to see more.
See what-
input.
yep.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean,
see what we can do, I guess.
I guess whatever we can do to make it more efficient in the county.
Uh-huh.
I know to make things efficient always costs money, but yeah, it's something that we can take a look at.
Well, that's the other conversation we had,
Yeah.
is if we were gonna add a third garage or a third base, would we add it in Round Lake? To be,
exactly.
to be efficient.
That's the right place to begin.
right.
Right.
I mean, it's nice that they have that desire and they've offered us land, but if we could put a third base anywhere, or if we could have 3 bases anywhere, where would we put them?
Would that information be in that last, evaluation we did when we did the Ojibwa? I mean, far as saying what's here, there and all that,
It has some of it in there.
so that,
Yeah.
that might help you out on that.
Right.
Okay.
And then I'll just skip to letter C.
Yeah.
Just in case, if you're in town government, you may have known this, but with the change in shared revenue last year where towns, cities, counties got additional, there was some other language in there regarding maintenance of effort. We didn't want local governments pulling funding out of certain areas as if they were going to give us the additional shared revenue. So we've had to do a filing, and it's for law enforcement, fire protection, and EMS. So counties are exempt from law enforcement. We don't provide any fire service, so we didn't have to file that. We do operate an ambulance service, so we did have to fill out a maintenance effort form for ourselves as well as provide one to all the municipalities. So just verifying that there's 4 categories that you can verify your maintenance of effort. One is your expenditures on the ambulance service. One is on response time. One is on training. And I'm forgetting the 4th one. But we verified based on our response time is improved and our expenditures are in excess of the year before. So we're maintaining our effort.
So is that Stone Lake ambulance now? Where's that house? That excellent? You know,
At this point, it's not moved.
not moved?
No.
So,
It's either in Stone Lake or it's in the rotation with the other garages.
Okay.
But it's not been relocated
All
to
right.
Exland.
That's just a question.
Okay.
Strike. Any questions? All right, thanks, Andy. Number 13, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council update memorandum of understanding.
Put that on as a placeholder. We have not.
I actually do have an update
Okay.
on this. So the TGB did meet with Nikki Late of Justice Point. They had a very productive meeting, it sounds like, and the tribe has decided to continue negotiations on the MOU. They're working on a proposed draft and plan to bring it to the county board or the CJCC with amendments made to the one that they had originally seen.
Okay.
So this, we don't approve this one?
No.
Because they're still working.
They're still working on it. It's also goes to CJCC and it's been a lot of discussion in that committee on that. But they did just meet and it sounds like it went well. But it sounds like there's also going to be some amendments that they're going to propose from the draft that we all saw at CJCC. So moving forward, I guess, is what it sounds like.
Okay,
Sounds better.
Yeah.
thanks, Judge. All right, any questions? Not. Number 14, outside committee updates. Andy, explain this to me.
Yeah, this is an opportunity if any of you are appointed to outside committees. I don't know, I'm trying to think of any off the top of my head that would affect this committee, but
Oh, I see, okay.
like you, some of you are appointed to transit. You know, we're trying to get the board members, when you're appointed to those committees, you attend to bring back anything that's pertinent to this committee that you're attending on.
Okay,
So
Oh, yes, on that.
got it.
local emergency planning committee would be one for here.
I know Mr. Kinsley said at the last
Yeah.
county board meeting that they were gonna be coming out and I just wanted to make sure. So,
Just taking a quick look here at the committee list to give you an idea of, so it's just a way to bring that information back.
I haven't missed that.
CJCC, we already do here, everybody gets covered. Local emergency planning committee, be another one for this. I mean, honestly, transit commission, the NAMACOG, if there's anything pertinent happening there that you want to share with the public safety committee. There's also the traffic safety committee. I think Jeff, you're appointed to that. If there's anything that's related to public safety there that comes up. Just trying to not have that information stay at those committees, but make it back to the full board.
so who would give that report? The chairs or anybody on that?
Anybody who's been appointed to those committees. So
Okay. All right,
keep that in mind when you're attending those committees that bring a report back.
right, okay. All right, thanks. Future agenda items. We're bringing back, Lynn, the GenCom radio contact thing. Okay. And Round Lake Ambulance, yes, thank you. And correspondence reports from conferences and other meetings. Not. No more business. I want to thank everybody. We're adjourned.
Mr. Chair, could
Yes.
you just make the announcement that because July 4th is next month, we're going to probably be meeting on July 3rd, which is a Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I read that too. So, you know, our next meeting for public safety is gonna be July 3rd, not July 4th. So.
You guys yapping up there. You hear that?
Go get them, Mark. All right, thanks, everybody.